I'm also shocked that America would betray Ukraine. I thought that America had honest intentions in defending Ukraine and always cared about Ukrainian autonomy. I'm so confused about all of the things that are happening, except I'm not. I said that this was going to fucking happen, and it's happening.
John Mishema believes that the great powers of the world dominate the international system and they constantly engage in security competition with each other, which sometimes leads to war. Well, joining me now from Chicago is John. And we have Lavrov praising Donald Trump for pointing a finger at NATO. We've had Donald Trump blaming you.
It's kind of interesting that Trump isn't calling Bibi a dictator for also delaying elections in Israel. Excuse me. Benjamin Netanyahu is the most moral politician on the planet. Okay, I got $100 million from Miriam Adelson, and I will do Israel's bidding. I'll do more for Israel than they even demand of me. Okay, that's my special boy. Damn, Mersheimer on CNN? Mersheimer on CNN? Why do they have... Wait a minute. What's going on? Why are they asking a guy who's very clearly a Putlerite what his analysis looks like? That's weird. What? What? Oh, man, that's crazy. I'm shocked to see this. I'm shocked to see Mersheimer on CNN. I'm also shocked that America would betray Ukraine. I thought that America had honest intentions in defending Ukraine and always cared about Ukrainian autonomy. I thought that that was what was going on this entire time. I thought America had good ambitions, emancipatory ambitions in Ukraine. I'm so confused. I'm so confused about all of the things that are happening, except I'm not. I said that this was going to fucking happen, and it's happening.
Ukraine for the war in its country. What's your perspective on where we are at and this newfound US-Russia relationship, burgeoning relationship, or rapprochement, if you will?
Well, there's been a fundamental change in American policy going from the Biden administration to the Trump administration. It's truly remarkable the extent to which the Trump administration has abandoned what has been the Biden administration's policy towards both Russia and Ukraine and adopted a radically new approach. And now what you have is a situation where it sounds like the Europeans who talk like the Biden administration are operating on a different planet than the one that the Trump administration is operating on. And we're all
Okay, me and Mersheimer have the same glasses, by the way, not the ones I'm wearing today, which is pretty crazy.
All this leads doesn't appear to be good.
Well, you could argue that the Biden approach wasn't working, that the conflict continues nearly 3 years in, and we were well aware that Donald Trump was anxious to see an end to this war. In fact, he said he could finish it in the first 24 hours of his presidency. Well, that clearly hasn't happened. But his US envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, is in Kyiv today. This is what he said when he arrived in Kyiv. Have a listen.
Same hair. We're both the same age. Yes, and we both also love Vladimir Putin together.
Understand the need for security guarantees. It was very clear to us the importance of sovereignty of this nation and independence of this nation as well. And and part of my mission is to sit and listen and say, okay, what are your concerns? Where are we at? So we can go back to the United States, talk to President Trump, and with Secretary Rubio and the rest of the team, and just ensure that we get this one right.
That is a very much less bombastic sort of attitude or atmosphere that Keith Kellogg brings to Kyiv from President Trump than that which we've heard from the president himself. Do you think the US can get the Ukrainians on board with these talks, given what we...
Are CNN manufacturing consent for Trump? No. What CNN is doing here is not manufacturing consent for Donald Trump. What CNN is doing here is basically finally going to a person who is a little bit more realistic. And certainly, it's no different than when CNN approached me after the election, okay? It's not to manufacture consent for Donald Trump. It's to basically be like, okay, well, we did a lot of manufacturing consent in the opposite direction, and now, you know, here, we'll give you your flowers. That's basically the same thing that's happening here with Mersheimer. It's an opportunity for someone it's an opportunity for them to basically try to describe to their audience like what has been happening as opposed to what they've been saying all along.
Understand to be, at least in principle, Donald Trump's position at this point.
Just to be very clear, Keith Kellogg is not an important player. He's not reflecting what is the policy. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, laid out what is NATO policy in Brussels on February.
I don't even think Pete Hegseth is a player. He's a mouthpiece, for the record. I don't think that Pete Hegseth is like an individual, like a Pete Hegseth is not autonomously deciding any of the shit, okay?
February 12th, that's last week. And he made it very clear there's not going to be an American security guarantee. And if there's a security guarantee, it's going to come from the Europeans. And Zelenskyy himself has said that a security guarantee without the United States is not a meaningful security guarantee. All of this is to say there's going to be no security guarantee for Ukraine. What the Russians want is they want a truly neutral Ukraine. And the only way you get a truly neutral Ukraine is where there is no NATO security guarantee, whether it's with or without the United States. So that's the basic fact of life that the Ukrainians have to face up to. Are they going to be happy about that? Absolutely not. The question is, can the Trump administration get the Ukrainians to accept the deal that they're now in the process of cutting with the Russians?
And that is the question. Do you believe at this point that that is likely?
Well, let me just tell you what I think the deal looks like. I think there are three key ingredients in the deal. There are a number of other ingredients, but the three key ones are, first of all, the West and Ukraine has to accept the fact that Russia has annexed 4 Ukrainian oblasts plus Crimea. The West and Ukraine have to accept that. That's number one. Number two, Ukraine has to be a genuinely neutral country. There can be no security ties with the West. And number three, Ukraine has to be substantially demilitarized so that it does not have much military capability, because the Russians don't want Ukraine to be a threat to Russia. Those are the three key ingredients, in my opinion, of the deal. And it appears from the body language and the language.
I don't know if I don't think that will. I don't know if America will be down to do that. Even like that's you know, you might as well just give Ukraine to Russia at that point. Like that is, yeah, you might as well be like, all right, it's Ukraine actually means the Ukraine, which actually means the border, as in the border of the Russian Empire at that point, which I think. How can the aggressors feel threatened? No, what he's talking about in that regard is Western influence over Ukraine, Ukrainian industry, Ukrainian politics, and specifically a dangling of a NATO membership. Dangling a Ukrainian NATO membership is a genuine threat to Russian sovereignty in the region. That much is true. This does not mean that Russia is correct in invading Ukraine. They still, I think, made a major misstep. To be fair, however, I will admit, maybe you can call me a liberal all day, every day, but if they were to do all of these things, if they were to force Ukraine to demilitarize and all this shit, okay, they were never going to be in NATO. That's one thing. But if there's no like security assurances or security cooperation and they like actively demilitarize Ukraine, first of all, it's never going to happen. They're always going to do they're always going to do insurgency. Okay. That I think would be that is probably the worst outcome for Ukraine. Like genuinely the worst outcome for Ukraine. It's even worse than if you were to somehow give Ukraine in its entirety to actually no, that would be the same outcome. I was going to say this is the worst outcome for Ukraine because you're basically giving Ukraine to Russia, and there's permanent military annexation and an endless amount of insurgency against Russian military. It would just be chaos. It would be complete chaos. Russia would never be able to maintain the entirety of Ukraine with its already crippled military force. Like, it's just fucking ridiculous. If a Twitch streamer can determine that Ukraine would have never gotten membership, then why the fuck can't the Russian government? Oh, a great question. Therein lies the problem. That's why I also think that invading Ukraine because they were worried about NATO expansion is a falsehood. It's a great question. The notion that Ukraine was going to join NATO was known by all parties to be completely ridiculous. Everybody involved knew that Ukraine was not joining NATO, with the exception of the Ukrainians. I think the Russian government knew that it was not happening either. What if NATO agreed to allow Russia in exchange for throwing out Turkey? Yeah, that's never going to happen either. You're out of your mind if you think that NATO is going to kick out its second largest military that has the most combat experience outside of the United States of America, that maintains multiple nukes in its American military bases. They're magically going to be like, yeah, we're no longer doing that. You know who asks that question all the time? Why is Turkey a part of NATO? Dumbass OSINT people, okay? Because they just don't understand how this stuff works. I see it all the time on Twitter. People are like, why is Turkey still a NATO ally again? Or like dumbass Israel supporters. Well, which, you know, is a Venn diagram, is a circle there. But dumbass Israel supporters, every time Erdogan comes out and is like, oh, Netanyahu is Satan, actually, which is just empty threats against Israel. And Turkey is still a willing servant of Western interests, of course. Every time he says some shit like that, all the stupid OSINT accounts and all the pro-Israel accounts will be like, why is Turkey in NATO? You should take Turkey out of NATO. They just completely are oblivious to how things work. You know? America is NATO. Number 2, you know who's NATO? Turkey. Okay? And I'm not saying that because I'm secretly a major advocate. I don't want Turkey to be a part of NATO. I don't want NATO to exist. I wish that historically it never did. Okay? Having said that, however, as things stand currently, the notion that like NATO, the notion that like America should drop Turkey from NATO because you're like a former Israeli government mouthpiece or whatever is silly. It just demonstrates that you don't understand how anything fucking works. That's all this is.
Language you hear coming out of Russia and coming out of the Trump administration, that we, the United States, have basically agreed on those 3 parameters. If that's true, then the question is, will the Ukrainians swallow this deal? It's hard for me to believe that it's going to be easy for them to swallow the deal. But the United States has a remarkable amount of coercive leverage, and it may just put the Ukrainians in a situation where they have no choice. But if it does happen that the Ukrainians accept the deal, that's how it will happen.
Liberals are so funny. Why are you ignoring Trump declaring himself king? I see you looking at those messages. Yeah, I'm secretly hiding the truth. Yeah, dude, I know. Trump is the king now. He declared it with a White House post with the shittiest AI. He's already doing king shit anyway. Who gives a fuck? God damn it, liberals. liberalism and its endless interest in hyper focusing on the aesthetics is going to lead to my demise. Okay, I'm just going to perish one day when trying to respond to a liberal who's like, but did you see? He's secretly saying he's gonna be king. Meanwhile, he's doing king shit every fucking day of the week.